Oh, okay. So I'm here to talk about anger, and I guess the thing about anger is we've all done it. We all know what anger is. I don't think any of us like it, and it's always topical. But one of the things which I thought about the precept just even this evening was in the precept and the commentary to the precept. It talks about how with anger you start building a self. And I thought, gee, how real that really is, because I know that when I've been angry, and I'm assuming the same thing happens for everyone else, how easy it is to justify. Yeah, I was angry and I was entitled to be. And straight away it becomes this building of self because everybody's right. And I thought, oh, that's really heavy stuff, you know. So one of the things that I'd thought about this morning, and I talked to Geoshin, and Geoshin said, oh, what are you going to talk about? Why did you choose anger? And I said, oh, well, it was one of the only ones that was left, but there's a good reason I have to talk about anger too. But I've been reading my morning reading. I read a little section each morning before meditating. I don't know if many of you are aware of the Sutta Nipata. It's really easy because the suttas are all just one page. And the very first verse of the very first chapter, and the Sutta Nipata is considered to be some of the oldest literature in Buddhism. So it's considered to be almost the original verses of the Buddha. And the very first thing that the Buddha says is, one who removes the anger that has arisen as one removes with herbs a snake's spreading venom, that bhikkhu gives up the here and the beyond as a serpent sheds its old worn out skin. And how true that is, you know, when you think of that justification made for anger, that you really just, you've got this skin on, and really what you really want to do is get rid of it. And I just thought, wow, you know, that's something else. And then the other thing on the next page in the second sutta, someone's talking about boiling rice for the cows. And I think that there's a reference here to the Upanishads. But the Buddha, the person who's asking the question says, I've boiled my rice, I've milked the cows. And the Buddha says, I don't boil with anger. And I thought, wow, that's something else, you know, think internally of how you might boil. And when I talked to Geoshin, I said, one of the things I thought I might refer to is Shantideva, because there's a whole section which he has about the perfection of forbearance and patience. But forbearance for Shantideva is Shanti, peace. It's a different translation of the word. So it's finding internal peace through forbearance. And patience is shama, which comes from the same root as shana, momentariness. It's to do with the duration of time. And so he says, and I like this, there's no evil equal to hatred, no spiritual practice equal to forbearance. It's the best, you know, it's the solution. And then he goes on to talk about anger. And I was really quickly, as I went through this morning, I was taken by this one. He was talking about, and I thought, wow, that's, you know, like, because the Buddha talks about boiling inside, but Shantideva talks about a boil appearing on the skin, an eruption of anger in your body. And then he talks about, well, how come I don't get angry at that? And when he's thinking about anger, he's thinking, well, one of the things that happens with anger is I lose my patience. But when I'm more patient, that evil diminishes. And I was thinking, oh, it's pretty cool. It's pretty good stuff, you know. And what I like about this text, and this is not the usual, this is a different, if you can see that, this is a fairly recent translation. But he talks about his process of actually going through anger. He doesn't talk about, oh, I'm not somebody who never gets angry, I'm perfect. He's actually talking about, on account of anger, I've been in hell thousands of times. He's really very real about it. So for me, I thought this was a really good text, and there is no spiritual practice equal to forbearance. So all those things talk about anger and about being patient. You know, some of them said to me, you know, patience is its own reward. And you go, oh, you know, like, how dare you, you know, like, but it's true, you know, patience brings a reward with it, just like forbearance does. And one of the things I was talking about with Joash when I discussed this, I said, you know, look, you might not know this. I spent years, I think Moni might know, but I spent years traveling around this state as a union official. And I worked with a whole model called Anger, Hope, Action, where you go around and you listen to people and you want to work out what is it that's pressing people's buttons. Why are they angry? And you don't want to solve their anger for them, because you want to empower them to resolve their anger themselves. And that offer anger is about through working to find hope or to solve things politically, or to be patient, or to, you know, like sometimes you very patiently engage in passive resistance. You might you might withdraw your labour, or you might engage in some kind of other practice. But it's a different kind of dealing with anger. And even though I think patience is sort of almost, and forbearance is the better way to go, I think it's a really important thing. And I thought I'd raise this as a question for this discussion about, well, when we are feeling angry, how or who or what empowers us to get through that, to find hope, or even to achieve a solution? Because it's in that frustration that's pressing our buttons that we can't. It might be the employer, or it could be, you know, and wherever I went, it didn't matter. Every workplace had a different thing that made them angry. It varied from the car park, not enough parking, or it could have been something to do with somebody in the workplace. You know, you can never tell, but you learn to listen. But it's also that issue about, well, how do we get over anger? Because we often think that someone is going to fix it for us, but we don't get to fix it out. We need to fix it ourselves. Anyway, so I thought I'd throw that out there. The floor is open.
Well, Peter, what was your question again? I have something I want to say, but I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
Well, the question which I was putting out there was, how do we empower ourselves to get past anger?
Okay. Yes. Okay.
How do we empower? What kind of, you know, do we use some kind of false hope, like it's justified, or do we actually get to the root cause and try and find a way through?
So I had a chance to I guess there's always a chance to deal with anger, but this past week, I kind of had a chance to sort of really engage with anger in a different way than I normally do. And it was really interesting. And what happened was so my husband and I kind of got into like we didn't get in a fight, but just, how when you're married to somebody for 25 years, they know how to push your buttons, I guess. And so, so like my buttons were pushed, and instead of reacting to it, I just kind of just left the room, and I could kind of feel like the waves of anger kind of building up, and I just kind of let them sort of do its thing. And then I could hear in my mind all of like the talk that comes with it, like all the little things, that the patterns of thought that sort of go along for years, that have just kind of gone along with all these things. And then that kind of went away, and then it was just gone, and it was totally gone. And I had a great rest of the day with him, and it was fine. It was kind of interesting to sort of see how it worked in my body, and my brain too. And just kind of going along with what you were talking about, it's kind of interesting that you're talking about patience, because I've been reading the Being Upright as we've been going through the precepts this time. And I read the chapter on anger this week, and he talked about the antidote to anger being patience. And so I kind of think like patience is, it kind of, in this case, it kind of worked for me, I guess. I don't know, something I need to explore more, I guess, but it was really kind of an interesting experiment.
One of the things for me that's really been apparent this week is because I get angry a lot about a lot of things that's going on in this world. And thank goodness I have a teacher, because sometimes it just reframing it has really, when I met with my teacher this week, when I really peel back the anger and look at the underlining, immediately it usually goes to heartbreaking and tears. And when you really think about, are you really pissed off, or are you just, is your heart breaking? Do you feel helpless? Do you feel hope, is there just, are you feeling hopeless about the situation? Is there just this deep compassion and frustration? And so I think that if I just don't stop at that initial anger and kind of peel back the layer, don't get stuck there, try to go deeper instead of just sitting in there and boiling and boiling and boiling. I think that's how, when you said, how do you get through that, Peter, when you said, how do you get through that? I really do think for me, that is the piece that I have to really consciously say, step out of that beginning anger and go to that other place and really think about what it is. And I think sometimes it's just, you don't want to cry all the time. And sometimes it's easier to just stay pissed off, because the second you step past that, at least for me, I am just bawling my eyes out, and my heart is just breaking. And that's that place of, you can't figure out what to do with it. And I think one thing that I came out of it with this week even was, even if you can just do a little piece, just something you do have control over, just reaching out to somebody locally. And if you can't reach out to somebody in Ukraine, just, it does feel a little bit better if you can tangibly just do something and not get stuck in that anger. So that's kind of how I am really trying to work through. And it's not just in this week, I think in every time anger arises, I need to consciously do that.
I think the issue that you're raising about hopelessness and that feeling of hopelessness is a really important one, because in the end, or maybe it's not the end, even in the beginning, you know, it's up to it's become I think it's something that I know that I've had to learn, and we all learn in a sense, is that it starts with us. No one else can fix it for you. It's something that's really, really hard for me. You know, like I just every day try and meditate and, you know, spend a half an hour sitting early in the morning when I get up, and go for a walk for an hour and do all those things, and then just try and keep level, you know, keep still. And it doesn't always work, you know, like the stuff going on about Ukraine is awful. It's awful. And then, you know, like last weekend I was in a session with my friends here, and, you know, like the Venerable Joey, she just basically said, everyone stop. We're now going to focus and meditate on just peace. And, you know, and she made a beautiful prayer towards the people in that are engaged in the conflict. And you go, wow, you know, that's how easy it is to forget about that stuff, you know, that we can even find a bit of peace in ourselves by wanting peace for others.
Peter, you've got 2 minutes.
I don't know if I've got anything else to say. I'm sort of a bit, I'm running out of words, which is probably a good thing at this point.
I love the phrase about not constructing reality for the self. And that helps me with anger, because it's like anger is this perfect outline of your ego. You know, when I get angry about something, it creates this perfect, it's like really, it reminds me of that Zen story, and I don't know who the teacher was or who the student was, but someone said, you know, what is the self? And the teacher says, well, that's a stupid question. So so that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Show me the self, I think was the question.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Kind of going back to the question that you had asked about how we deal with, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but I really appreciated what other folks said, and I've definitely found myself in similar responding similarly. And also I talk a lot about how I tell myself stories, and one of the main ways that I deal with when I start feeling anger arise is trying to identify what story it is that I'm telling myself, because often I'm telling myself a story about somebody else's motives, rather than just taking things for what they are at the time that things are happening. And even sometimes trying to change that story and into something that's a little more compassionate. Like if I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, it's like, well, you know, maybe they're rushing to their grandma because their grandma's sick or something like that. You know, I try to kind of change that story because I don't know what other people's motives are and what's going on for them. So anyhow, that was just my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Peter. So the 10th grade precept, do not defame the three treasures. Do not defame the three treasures. In the realm of the one, holding no concept of ordinary beings and sages, is the precept of not defaming the three treasures. To do something by ourselves without copying others is to become an example to the world, and the merit of this becomes the source of all wisdom. Criticize nothing, accept everything. So that's just really jam-packed with stuff. First off, Well, in the realm of the one, holding no concept of ordinary beings and sages is the precept of not defaming the three treasures. None of this precept didn't make any sense to me for a really long time until I really sat with it the past couple of months. Kyogen on Bodhidharma's commentary said, if we put sages in a place above and separate from ordinary beings, we cut the Buddha body in two. This is true regardless of the camp to which we assign ourselves. So we cut the Buddha body in two. What does that mean?
Well, it's kind of like doing, us and them. I mean, you're drawing a line, even if it's the person's above this line,
Yeah. Yeah, he goes on to say, when we first enter, for instance, as an example, when we first enter into a teacher-disciple relationship, there is such a high expectation of what the teacher's going to do or be. Chogyam Trungpa says that one of the first things to happen in this relationship is profound disappointment. There's a point where the teacher becomes the obstacle, becomes everything but what you want. How can this person be the teacher? There comes a point where we just drop that and we see this person in a really clear-eyed way as both teacher and ordinary being. That's one part of the relationship. The second part is taking the seat when it's our turn to do so, to be able to be in a senior position without attaching to ordinary beings and sages. So yeah, like you said, Mani, you could apply that to anytime we do us and them, especially when there's a power or a perceived power relationship, employees and bosses, or teachers and students, or parents and kids. And it feels so easy to say, well, I'm going to throw out everything that teacher said because that teacher, Chogyam Trungpa is a pretty good example because, he was not an angel. And yet his teachings, he created amazing teachers, Pema Chodron among others. So it isn't like, people are good or bad or all-knowing or ordinary beings or sages. So that when we get that our parents, I think that happens when we have our own kids sometimes, or when we just grow up and we see that our parents are not deities after all. They're just ordinary people who are doing their best. Or if we're in the other seat, that our kids, our students, our employees have skills and wisdom of their own. Second part, Dogen's commentary, to do something. I think this is Roshi Kennett's translation. Do you know that, Joshin? I'm not sure, but in our lineage, the translation goes, to do something by ourselves without copying others is to become an example to the world, and the merit of this becomes the source of all wisdom. Criticize nothing, accept everything. Well, this made less than no sense to me for a long time because I would look around during services or retreats, and all I ever saw was people dressing alike, doing exactly the same thing, chanting everything together, moving the same, and it just looked like everybody was even copying each other, or maybe copying some monks from the 12th century. And so to do something by yourself without copying others really had me stumped. What do you guys think about that? What does Dogen mean by that?
Yeah, I've been stumped by that too, because it's hard not to copy. See people doing things, you see other things happening, you go, that's a good idea. I think I'll try that for myself. And because we're all individuals, it's going to look a little different. You can't perfectly copy somebody, I don't think. But I guess to me, it means for me, it means don't be afraid to stand out there for what you believe in, even if you're going to get laughed at or nobody else agrees with you. If you really feel it in your heart and you've questioned it and said, is this good intent that I have? Don't be afraid to be yourself. That's what I'm thinking about for me anyway.
So that's nice. It kind of sounds like you're saying, don't be afraid to manifest your true self, who you are. Yeah.
And who that is, which is the hard part.
Yeah, and I think that in our practice, it kind of, as I started asking more questions, I learned that we're very rarely given a straight answer to anything in Zen. It's almost always, you need to figure that out for yourself. Get on the cushion, and so it's like you gotta just sit on that cushion all by yourself, basically. And eventually you'll come to your own understanding, and our teachers and the Dharma ancestors are there to maybe help us, but they can't do it for us. And the Sangha can help us, but each of us has to find our own way. Still, there's another translation that, even though it seems much more obscure, resonated very deeply with me, which was interesting because it sort of sounded like nonsense, but really beautiful nonsense. And it's Robert Aiken's translation of Dogen's commentary on the 10th precept. He writes, "The Teiko of the actual body is the harbor and the weir. This is the most important thing in the world. Its virtue finds its home in the ocean of essential nature. It is beyond explanation. We just accept it with respect and gratitude." So I'm going to read that again. "The Teiko of the actual body is the harbor and the weir. This is the most important thing in the world. Its virtue finds its home in the ocean of essential nature. It is beyond explanation. We just accept it with respect and gratitude." So like a lot of Dogen, it's kind of incomprehensible and at the same time very, very literal. So, Teiko is a Dharma talk. Well, I'll read you from Seth Segal's blog, Dharma Without Dogma, which is kind of a good blog if you ever want to read it. And he writes, a Teiko is a Dharma talk given by a Zen teacher. In our tradition, this is usually given in the stillness of a sesshin. So it's a Dharma talk. In this case, the Dharma talk in question is not a verbal one, and it's not given by a Zen teacher. It's the Teiko of the actual body, the teaching we may receive at any moment from the actual body, our bodies, our real bodies. Our actual body is this body right here and now, this lived body as we experience and act through it. The teaching of the actual body. But it's not just these 5 or 6 feet of skin, bones, muscles, and internal organs. Our body is an integral part of all that is, in a literal way, including not only the live feel of movement and emotion, but bird song, wheat fields, trees, and stars. We are stardust. This is literal. It's not a metaphor. We actually are all these things. And so the Teiko of the actual body, and this is only how I'm reading this. I mean, I don't really have a clue what Dogen really meant, but the teaching of the actual body being all of that, the universe, the Dharmakaya, is the most important thing in the world. Seth Sigal goes on to write, everything is teaching us all the time. Theologians sometimes question why God spoke to the prophets but no longer speaks to us, but Dogen's actual body never shuts up. Let those who have ears hear. So this actual body, the Dharmakaya, is the harbor and the weir. Do you know what a weir is? So a harbor is a safe place for a boat in a river or an ocean, and a weir is like a dam, a small dam that controls floods and helps boats navigate a river. So the teachings of our bodies in relationship to all of the universe is helpful to us in navigating the turbulent waters of samsara. He writes, Dogen tells us this living teaching of the universe is the most important thing in the world. Listen, feel, see. This teaching is beyond words. There's no explanation we can give. We just accept it with respect and gratitude. So that's one way to work with that translation. What it says to me, everything around us, every interaction, every relationship, including our relationship with the earth and with the three existences, past, present, and future, everything, we have manifested it all of it, each of us individually. I have manifested it all, and it is all my and your expression of the three treasures. There's a little practice that Pema Chodron talks about, where the first thing you do when you wake up is you think to yourself, I'm entering the sacred world. And so everything you do is a sacred act. I think this guy, R. Crumb, famous tortured cartoonist, says it beautifully. R. Crumb writes, everything we do has significance. Every action, every thought leaves an imprint, not only on the self, but on the world, on others, and even on time, on all who come after us. This implies a responsibility for one's thoughts and actions that should be taken most seriously. And yet one feels helpless, a hapless victim of circumstances beyond one's control, as if one's behavior and thoughts did not originate in the self, but were a product, an accumulation of imprints from the world, from our ancestors, and from the people around us. It behooves us to take responsibility, to take the power to decide how one will act and even how one will think, not only for the betterment of oneself, but for the betterment of the world, all the others, and all who will come after us. Isn't that cool? Everything we do has significance.
It's interesting because that kind of goes with do not indulge anger. You know,
very much so.
Yeah. If we're angry about what's going on in the world, then instead of accepting it and realizing that maybe we can do something about it just with our thoughts and no.
I thought that too, Penny, that just anger by itself and fueling it is just adding to the toxicity of the universe, you know. So yeah, I thought that too. Here's yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ruth Ann.
I was going to say I just got the picture. That's like cutting the Buddha in half, you know, because function. And yes, this ties in nicely with Peter's talk about anger. And thanks for those beautiful quotes. Last week, Joshin said that gratitude was the first, I forgot who she was quoting, the first step to being a fearless Buddha. And I thought, with this world and where I'm at in terms of my age, I thought, I want to be fearless. I have to be fearless because that's what I feel I need to be in this time, in this moment. So gratitude, I realized after she said that gratitude it's more than participatory. I saw it as it's a dynamic, and I can do that in every action I take. I don't always, but it's a nice place to know I can go. And when the first part of the quotes, right from the precepts before you started the references, it's just like the ones that are innovators in our society are the ones that, the shakers and movers, like Thich Nhat Hanh was brave and risked, of course, being thrown out of his home country, but brave not to take sides in a horrible conflict. So thanks for this.
Thanks, Ruth Ann. What I really feel like at the meat of this precept for me, and I've really been sitting with it for a couple months now, is this not cutting the Buddha body into 1,000 pieces, which is more like it. There is no difference between ordinary beings and sages, or between, in a very literal way, in the realm of the one, there's no duality, there's no separation. And yeah, I thought it was interesting in this precept. I mean, the format of this one is different than all the others. It starts out, do not defame the three treasures, period. All the others have a prohibitory statement and then a positively framed statement. This one doesn't, so I don't know why not, but I thought it would be interesting to add one. So if we were going to add one, what would it be?
This isn't well thought out, but don't be afraid to be yourself, and don't stop others from letting them from being themselves. Except, of course, that's a do not, sorry.
I think actually it kind of does have a positive framing, but it's not formatted the way the other precepts are. The very last line is accept everything, criticize nothing, which begs the question, what does it mean to accept everything? How do we not criticize racism, pollution, wealth inequality?
And what does accepting them mean without condoning them?
Yeah, Penny kind of touched on that too, I think, with your comment before about anger.
And sometimes just accepting when you kind of go to just the concrete fact, if you know, you can't change it. It's already happened. It's the past. The second you're thinking about it, it's already the past. You can't change it. So there's nothing really, you can't do nothing but accept it. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. We can't change history. And even if we, turn left instead of right, well, we were turning left. You weren't changing the turn. I don't know, when you really look at it just black and white, just as it is, there's really nothing that you can do other than accept it. All that other stuff, it's kind of like Emily was saying about the story we tell ourselves, and those emotions and that anger, if we're going to get stuck in it. Really, if you just accept and go to the second moment, it probably would save us a lot of anguish.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like Dixie said, too, I think it's a language problem. Almost everything comes down to being a language problem, but this one, equating the word accept with condone, to accept doesn't mean you condone. It just means this is how it is. I'm going to accept reality, like you said.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about acceptance throughout my recovery from alcoholism, accepting it, like you said, it doesn't mean condone. It doesn't mean that you just have to lie down and accept brutal things and stuff, but accepting and maybe then doing something about it, but not sitting around and criticizing it too. So, I mean, I've looked at that, criticize nothing, accept everything, that it's hard.
It's really hard, but it's possible. We did that practice, complaint-free world.
Yeah.
And it's like that, you can do something. If you can do something about it, then do it. Yeah.
But don't just sit around and complain about
it. Complain about it.
What it brings up too is our expectations. I know that's one thing that I've had to really work with my practice, is that we have these expectations of how our world is supposed to be, how the rest of the world is supposed to be. And again, that's just kind of a story. I mean, yeah, just looking at our expectations.
I have 1 minute left, and I want to read you this beautiful, beautiful poem by David Whyte, who writes, "Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence, and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you."
What a beautiful way to end our time together this evening, Teiko. And thank you, Peter, for your offering as well on the precept of not indulging anger. This wraps up our series, and I'll have a talk next week that sort of puts an ending on this. But I've really appreciated what's been brought forward and the way people have engaged and asked questions and offered comments and discussed some of these topics. But so thank you all. I'll see you next week. I hope you have a good night.